Welcome back to All-Star Buzz. Thank you for joining us, and let's begin. Sunny Hostin completely unraveled when her co-hosts suggested that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, might not be as effective as it claims to be. Her reaction was so over the top that she ended up defending workplace hiring practices that some argue are discriminatory. Let's dive into her fiery meltdown as she responds to Pete Buttigieg's comments about DEI potentially backfiring and creating more Trump supporters.
What do we mean when we talk about diversity? Is it caring for people's different experiences and making sure no one's mistreated because of them, which I will always fight for? Or is it making people sit through a training that looks like something out of Portlandia, which I have also experienced, and it is how Trump Republicans are made, if that comes to your workplace with the best of intentions, but doesn't actually get at what actually matters here, what's actually at stake.
So do you agree with him that DEI initiatives drove voters to Trump? And what else can be done to make sure everyone is represented on an even playing field?
You know what I think?
What do you think?
I like Pete, of course, but I think he got that so wrong, and I think it was so tone deaf, considering
Which
what's
part?
going on. All of it. I thought all of it was tone deaf.
This isn't new for Sunny. Her reactions follow a predictable pattern whenever someone from her political circle dares to challenge the party narrative. Remember when John Fetterman, Stephen A. Smith, Ruben Gallego, or Eric Adams appeared on the show? Each time, Sunny assumed they'd echo her views, only to spiral when they didn't. And this time, she's no different. The highlight of the exchange? When Sunny boldly asked, "You want to know what I think?" And Joy Behar replied, "What do you think, Sunny?" That moment had all the dramatic buildup of someone about to deliver wisdom. But in Sunny's case, it's more like waiting for the most baffling statement you've ever heard.
So in my view, when you look at the stats, it is really clear from McKinsey, actually, a consulting firm that Pete used to work for, that firm found that companies with more diversity financially and socially outperform those that are less diverse. So the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it makes sense. And I think we can all agree that we want our workforce to reflect what our world looks like.
I think he does too, though, don't you?
No, I think he does. But my question, really, I think we need to reframe the discussion. If the problem is these programs, what is the solution? Should we just then depend on the benevolence of Elon Musk and white billionaires to hire women and people of color?
No.
Should we just depend on corporations to, on their own, make the workforce more diverse?
Sunny then launched into a defense of DEI with a passionate argument. We all want a workforce that represents the world. But here's where things took a turn. Instead of emphasizing personal growth or meritocracy as solutions, she doubled down on DEI's necessity. Her stance, forget depending on yourself or honing your skills to become indispensable in any workplace. DEI is the only path forward. Her critics argue that this approach dismisses the idea of merit-based success entirely. They believe that true equality comes from fostering individual excellence rather than enforcing quotas or identity-based hiring. But Sunny? She wasn't having any of it. No, we can't agree on that. That's what you crazy liberals agree on. My side agrees that we should have a workforce full of the most competent and skillful people at the job they were hired to do. And then, she regurgitates the same pompous Democrat phrase that lost them the entire election. Well, when you look at the stats, you mean these Democrat NGO-funded stats? The stats that exist solely to strengthen one of the many illogical Democrat ideologies? The stats that say the economy is great? The stats where experts claim men can become women? The stats where experts said the COVID vaccine would stop you from getting it and transmitting it? And now, conveniently, the experts say diversity in the workplace makes businesses better. It just goes against sheer, basic third-grade level common sense. The only thing that makes businesses better is hiring the best people, regardless of their race. Now, this is when Sarah Haynes hops in and basically shuts down Sunny, saying, "Nah, this DEI stuff is a clown show."
The David Axelrod conversation you're talking about was in reference to the DNC winter meeting that happened over a few days, and I just want to show a quick clip of what went down.
You may vote for 2 males, 2 females, 2 of any gender, okay? Nope, you can't do that because we've got to balance. You could vote for 1 of any gender, okay? Or no, non-binary gender, excuse me.
So many people are so frustrated that people are pushing back on DEI that they're not taking a minute to pause that maybe DEI itself needed improvements in its actual application. We're seeing a lot of things. One was New York Times staged fake interviews with diverse candidates. Wells Fargo, the New York Times reported it, sorry, just to be clear. A woman or a person of color, after the position had been filled, to check off their boxes of minority inclusion. That's not helping anyone. So a lot of the problem is that,
that implies that
Lily
the woman
Zhang
wasn't qualified for the job.
There was no job.
When that absolute embarrassment at the DNC took place, it started to make the ladies of The View realize that this DEI thing is nonsense. The Democrats may be too far gone to ever honestly return to normality. Sunny, however, is too thick-skulled to realize that these gender-balanced voting rules at the DNC, supposedly designed to be inclusive, are actually discriminatory. If you tell people they have to vote for only 2 guys, only 2 women, and then someone who's non-binary, what happens if all the best candidates are women? What if they're all men? What if they're all non-binary? You're excluding yourself from the best people because you're putting arbitrary quotas in place to reach some sort of equality. And I almost fell out of my chair laughing when Sarah had to tell Sunny, "These weren't real jobs. Did you not hear what I said at the beginning? These were fake interviews." That's because Sunny lives in this la-la land with fairy dust falling all around her and music playing in her ears. And that's evident every time she opens her mouth. Now, this is when Sunny displays her stupidity at an all-time record high, leaving Alyssa and Sarah speechless.
Sunny, you've been asking all day, what are the things?
What's the solution?
So she has solutions. She's saying focus on measurable results like pay equity, physical and psychological safety, holding network events, blind hiring. There are a lot of things that you can couch
Blind hiring, that makes sense.
Right,
But
the
isn't
point
that
is,
kind of merit-based? Isn't that the whole argument that DEI is against?
well,
is
she
merit-based?
dug in because she
No,
studied,
but
she's a consultant on DEI for
is not
companies for 10 plus years. And what she's saying is, regardless
Blind
of the
hiring is the opposite of DEI.
No, that's not true. DEI programs make sure that the most qualified candidates, traditionally excluded from opportunity, are given the chance to compete. So this notion somehow that blind hiring could work, I think that's
But wouldn't
something.
it take the
But it's
like,
not
race
about
or identity
merit,
out of
but
it,
it's
and it would
not
be purely based on what you put forward?
But it's not about merit, because the people that are in these DEI programs are already the best of the best.
but she's
then
saying that
I'm saying-
companies end up doing tokenism rather than helping.
I love that Sunny stink face at the end, where she realizes that everybody on the panel thinks she's a complete moron. When Alyssa said, "Blind hiring is the opposite of DEI," and Sunny replied, "No, that's not true." It genuinely made me wonder how she puts her pants on in the morning, or how she even gets to work at The View. She is undoubtedly the most DEI hire in any position that's ever existed in America. If someone that void of intelligence is allowed to come on a nationally broadcasted show and speak about politics, they're giving her the job over like 100 million other qualified candidates. But actually, if the qualifications for being on The View are that you have to be void of any intelligence, then Sunny Hostin might actually be the most qualified person on planet Earth for this job. And even when she tried to explain her position, all she did was explain discrimination in a different way. Oh, DEI just gives certain people a chance to compete. Well, if it only gives certain people a chance to compete and excludes other groups of people, then that is discriminatory. She's so empty-headed that the few brain cells she has are probably wondering if they're alone in there. I mean, I truly don't know what's more shocking, that The View admitted DEI is bad, or that Sunny Hostin is even stupider than I thought she was. Now, speaking of extremely stupid DEI hires on television, here's Jamal Hill on CNN saying how Donald Trump hosting a Black History Month celebration at the White House, get this, was a slap in the face to Black people.
He also mentioned at the same time that there were going to be statues of Kobe Bryant and Muhammad Ali. So it just seems a little hypocritical that you would be doing everything in your power to sort of outlaw the teachings of what, say, a Muhammad Ali stood for. Like, are you going to tell people that he stood against war, that he stood against these very progressive civil rights issues. That doesn't seem to be the part of it. And what I noticed there from that clip is that he had to read letter by letter about what these people, what these great Americans have done in terms of progress for our country, because it's not something he's familiar with and not something that is natural for him. So I consider this to be an insult, a slap in the face, and frankly, all the people that attended this, look, I guess God bless you if you've never been to the White House and maybe you looked at it as some kind of great experience, but everything this president has stood for and done in the last decade or so has been a complete rejection of what Black history is.
There it is. The extremely pretentious Democrat condescension. I mean, if you think going to the White House is like a big deal, then I guess, huh? Whatever to you. I would like to think that every single American citizen would be honored and thrilled to go to the White House. And that's the problem with the perpetual victim state that these race-hustling leftists find themselves in. Nothing's ever good enough for you. Trump threw an event, invited 300 influential Black people and leaders to the White House, celebrated Black history, and announced that he was going to enact 12 statues of iconic Black figures in a brand new White House garden. And you call it insulting? And then, apparently, Donald Trump reading the biography of some of these historical Black figures is him being racist? I mean, give me a break. Like, we all know who Rosa Parks is. We all know who Frederick Douglass is. But none of us know their biographies from memory. So instead of Trump just saying, Rosa Parks, the lady on the bus, he wanted to give a more appropriate and appreciative speech about her. He had a postcard with information about her biography on it, and somehow that makes him the bad guy? It's these kinds of Black folks that make me embarrassed. They think it's so cool to talk about how systemically oppressed they are. They love to talk about how the white man doesn't love them. And then, as soon as the white man shows them any appreciation, they're insulted by it because, for some reason, they feel like it isn't genuine. These victims seem like such miserable, insufferable people. Of course, no one wants to be part of your party if they have to be miserable and pessimistic. The race-hustling, identity politics era is over. But let's listen to the other Black person on the panel explain how what Trump did was actually horrendous because America is still so racist toward Black people. Watch.
What happened today was a beautiful thing.
So I don't. I think he's trying to gaslight us. I mean, come on, man. You have got to be kidding.
So if he didn't have it today, you would be back.
He's trying to gaslight us. First he said he doesn't want anybody in government to celebrate Black History Month, and then he says, okay, I'm going to put on an event about Black History Month, and I'm going to be the speaker. There aren't any Black people, really saying anything about what's happening with him. He tried to use DEI as literally a racial slur against us, as if Black people are benefiting from anything in this country and getting anything we're not qualified for and don't have to work twice as hard for. Black people have to live in the real world. When the cops come, we're scared because we might not come out of it alive. We walk into a store, if they let us in, we're followed around. We don't get loans when we have the same credit score as everybody else because we're Black. We have to live in the real world. You can't gaslight us. We know reality when we see it. This is not real. This is a joke. That's what that is.
So we're just going to take a second and debunk everything that guy said. The most common trope from the DEI left is that there's no way Black people are getting in with subpar standards because we have to work 5 times as hard as everybody else just to achieve what a white person can. Well, as we know, last year Harvard was sued for its DEI admissions, and the Supreme Court ruled it was illegal. So, let's do a quick refresher and take a look at this chart to show exactly why what he said is the opposite of what's actually happening. If you're in the top 10% of applicants and you're white, you have a 15.3% chance of being accepted. If you're Asian, you have a 12.7% chance of being accepted. If you're Black, you have a 56% chance. If you're Hispanic, you have a 31.3% chance. Now, if you're in the 50th percentile of applicants, just the middle of the pack, white people have a 2.6% chance of being admitted. Asians have a 1.9% chance. Blacks have a 22.4% chance, and Hispanics have a 9.1% chance. Now, where you can really see what's happening is this. Black people in the 40th percentile, so below average, have a 12.8% chance of being accepted into Harvard. Meanwhile, an Asian in the top 10% of applicants has a lower chance of being admitted than a black person in the 40th percentile. That literally exposes the issue, and it's why the Supreme Court ruled it illegal. Whites and Asians actually have to work 3 times as hard as a black person just to get the same outcome. Now, let's look at medical school acceptance rates, and it echoes the exact same thing. If you have an MCAT score between 24 and 26 and you're black, you have a 56% chance of being admitted. If you're Asian, 6%. If you're white, 8%. Now, if you have an MCAT score between 30 and 32, you have a 94% chance of getting accepted if you're black, an 83% chance if you're Hispanic, a 63% chance if you're white, and a 58% chance if you're Asian. That means an Asian with a top score gets in at the same rate as a black person with the lowest score. There's your DEI. And they always love to throw their stats around, even though they're completely ridiculous, but they completely disregard our stats. The guy continues to say, "Oh, black people, when we're stopped by the cops, we don't know if we're going to get shot and killed." Well, cops kill more white people than they kill black people. He says, "Oh, if you're black and if they let you into the store, they're going to follow you around the whole time." What store isn't letting black people in? He knows that's not true. He's just making something up to fearmonger. Then he says, "Oh, blacks, we don't get loans at banks when we have the same credit scores as white people." Well, first, more than your credit score is taken into account when a bank decides to give you a loan. Second, all of the underwriting is done by AI, computer software. It's not like there's some white supremacist sitting there with an approval stamp, seeing the name Jamal, and deciding not to issue the loan. And third, banks are in the business of loaning money and making money, and they don't care what skin color you are. If you're a low-risk borrower and they'll make a profit lending you money, they're going to lend you as much as they can. These people are completely out of touch and not living in reality. But it's people like Sunny Hostin and these panelists who are going to keep this racist ideology alive and demand that the Democrat Party maintains this losing strategy as part of their core principles. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. I'll see you guys in the next one!